All right, so I'm going to show you how to thread your loom. So you have your loom put together. I like to take the yarn from the center of the ball instead of the outside of the ball just to keep the yarn more organized as I'm working. You can do it however you prefer. So we're going to start with a slip knot. So you want to have your yarn, you have the end of your yarn, and it's going to be curved into a U when you hold it with your fingers like this. So you can see the end is right here and there's a U. What I'm going to do is take the loop of the U and twist it. So you can see a piece of yarn goes on top of the tail, and I'm going to take two fingers through that loop that I've made, and I'm going to grab the middle part of the tail while holding onto the tail and pull it through that loop. So now that I pull it, you can see I have a knot with a loop on the end, so that's called a slip knot. If I pull these two pieces of yarn on either side, the knot will slide and then eventually it goes away. So I'm going to show you that again. I have this U of yarn. I'm going to twist it so that I make a loop. I'll put two fingers through the loop. I'm going to grab that part of the tail as I'm holding on to the end of the tail to make a slip knot. So you want to make a slip knot, and we're going to put the slip knot right here on this kind of fatter part of the tooth for the frame loom. So I'm going to take it and pull these pieces of yarn, and I want the knot to end right in this slot here. So I can always shift it around. I'm going to pull that tail inside of the frame loom, and I have the knot right there. So now that the yarn is secured to the frame loom, I'm going to go ahead and start threading the loom. So these teeth right here are what's going to hold the yarn in place. As you're threading the loom, you want the yarn to be somewhat tight. Not super tight where it's pulling super hard, but tight enough that there's some type of tension and the yarn is not saggy. So you can see right here, after I pull it, I can put my finger on the back of the yarn right by the tooth to hold it into place. So when I come back to the end here, instead of going to the second slot, I'm going to go back to the first slot where the yarn came out. And the yarn comes out, I bring it to the right and go back through the next slot where that tooth is. And now I'm going to go back into the same slot that that yarn came out of and go around the tooth. So you can see each tooth is going to have the yarn wrapped around it, so the slot is going to house two pieces of yarn. And the slot being the space in between the teeth. So I hold tension, pull it through, bring it to the next tooth, and I'm going to hold the tension on the back as I pull it through. So I'm going to do that all the way down the frame loom, working from left to right. You can work in whatever direction is comfortable for you. And notice at the end of each piece of yarn, when I go around the teeth, I'm holding it with my hand to hold that tension. And as I bring the yarn across, I'm holding tension on it. So you can see here when you touch your, this is called the warp where the yarn is threaded, it's a little bit bouncy because there's tension on it. If there's no tension, it's just going to droop down, and then it's harder to work with. Oops, if it slips off, just put it back. So I'm going to go all the way down. And you'll notice if your yarn slips off, the yarn grabs onto the loom just a little bit. That's because we're working with wool, and wool is not a smooth fiber. It has cuticles just like your hair, but those cuticles are pointier than normal, than your hair or than other fibers, and that's what causes wool to felt. So after we weave with the wool that you've been provided, we're going to felt it. The process of felting is done by shocking the fibers from cold to hot water and with agitation. And all of those cuticles, and I'll show you a picture of those later, will grab onto each other because they get shocked. And that's how wool gets felted. So we'll do that later. That's something you can do easily at home in the sink, even in a washing machine if you have one, but you can just do it with hot and cold water in your sink. All right, so I'm almost to the end. So we're gonna go ahead and thread this all the way down. If you were going to weave something other than wool into this, and you didn't want to have every single have as much warp thread, so this is the warp of the weaving, you can also skip the teeth so you have a less dense warp. We're going to try to do an even balanced weave, which means that the warp and the weft are balanced. And so I will show you how we're going to do that. But if you wanted an unbalanced weave structure where there's more weft than warp, and I'll explain what weft is in a little bit, then you can skip your teeth, but not for right now. All right, so I'm at the end of this. I want to go ahead and push down all the yarn along the teeth. Make sure nothing's going to pop up. If something does pop off, so say I take this and it pops off and it's laying there, you just want to straighten it out and pull it back over the teeth as much as possible. Just keep pushing it down every now and then so that it doesn't fall off. So I'm at the end here, and then I'm just going to take scissors and I'm going to cut the end, and then I'm going to tie it around this last tooth. So as I tie it, I'm going to pull tension right here. I've looped it around. You don't need any special knot, just a knot, but you want to hold on to that thread and keep some tension as you tie it. So I'm tying it once and I'm going to double knot it. So I'm just looping around and tying a knot to hold this in place. All right, so your warp is threaded, everything is pushed down, and you have somewhat of a spring to your weaving, to your warp. So the warp is what goes onto the loom. This is the vertical part of the weaving. And then we're gonna insert the weft going horizontally. So the weft is the yarn that's inserted to the horizontally to the warp. So the warp is what's on the loom, the weft is inserted, and I will show you how to do that next.